Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world. This episode analyzes the Atheist Manifesto by Christopher Hitchens. Now, this is a compressed, structural companion to our deep dive, so it's not a summary, it's not advice, and it is definitely not advocacy. We're going to use Hitchens' text to analyze the structure of organized religion as a powerful system, to look at its architecture, its internal logic, and how it really functions out in the world.
This quote from Hitchens gets right to the heart of it. The central issue, as he frames it, isn't about personal faith. It's about the institution's claim to ultimate, absolute authority, the power to set the rules for all of humanity.
So to really understand this, we have to shift our perspective. Let's stop looking at religion as just a collection of personal beliefs and start analyzing it as a very specific kind of institutional system, one that has its own rules and its own functions.
We can actually give it a name: an institutional authority system. I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but its key function is to manage what it defines as absolute truth. And from that claim follows its primary purpose: to direct and regulate something incredibly personal, your individual conscience.
Okay, here's a really interesting way to think about it. Using a metaphor. Picture religion as an authority operating system. The sacred texts? Well, that's the source code, the foundational instructions. The institution then acts as the system administrator, and its main goal is to manage the permissions of every single user. And in this case, that means managing your conscience.
So if that's the system, what makes it tick? Like any operating system, this one runs on a core logic. Let's take a look at the incentives that shape its behavior and really ensure its survival. The crucial thing to get here is that the system is designed to perpetuate itself. It naturally rewards conformity, right? Because that ensures stability. It seeks political power not just for its own sake, but as a tool to protect its core claims to authority. And critically, it has to discourage dissent, because questioning the source code, well, that threatens the entire operating system.
Hitchens makes a really sharp point about these incentives. While the system's claims might be about the next world, its deep-seated drive for survival and influence demands that it exercises power in this world. The institution's internal logic actually incentivizes a focus on secular, real-world power.
So how does this all build? What happens when the system's incentives scale up? We start to see some very predictable outcomes when this claim to absolute moral authority successfully merges with the power of the state. And this is where we run into a crisis in perception. By viewing religion as only a private personal matter, we can completely miss its very public function as an institutional and political actor. We see the belief, but we overlook the system and its inherent drive for influence. When the system succeeds in its quest for influence, a pretty predictable pattern starts to emerge. First, its sacred doctrines get woven into state law. Suddenly, dissent is no longer just a private disagreement. It becomes a public crime, like blasphemy. And finally, the state's monopoly on force is used to enforce religious orthodoxy and to silence any challenges to its authority. Hitchens gives us a really concrete example of this outcome. An institution, feeling threatened by criticism, uses its political influence to push for a law that protects it from that very critique. Dissent gets legally reframed as an offense. This is the system's self-preservation instinct in action. All right, finally, let's pull back and put this system into a broader context. We need to understand how it persists, and also how its fundamental design compares to a competing model for organizing society. The system's resilience isn't just about coercion. It's incredibly durable because it often plays a central role in forming our identities, providing a sense of community, and building institutional power over centuries. It becomes deeply embedded in the social fabric. And here is the analytical payoff. When we see it as a system, we can compare its design to another one, the secular constitutional model, or a liberty operating system. One system sources its truth externally, from revelation. The other sources it internally, from human reason and discovery. One seeks to regulate the conscience, the other seeks to protect it. And their responses to dissent, well, they couldn't be more different. Suppression versus free debate. And this is why Hitchens concludes his argument by invoking that foundational principle of the competing system. The wall of separation isn't just a political phrase, it's a structural design choice. It's intended to keep these two fundamentally different operating systems from merging, and in doing so, ensuring the freedom of conscience from institutional control.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.